Be- and I'm about to run out of space, I think. Sorry. Hopefully this can keep going. So, he ended up convincing American populace over just from having a few women in New York City smoking to become smokers. In that same light, false flags that happen, there's a lot of people that believe everything doesn't add up properly in Sandy Hook. Not to say that Sandy Hook didn't happen, that kids weren't murdered, but the fact that it was orchestrated, it was planned, that there's always been this push and this movement, knowing what's coming with this event, that guns need to be taken off the streets, that they were trying to remove the protection we have to defend ourselves against our own government. The Boston bombing. There's a lot that shows within the Boston bombing that, yes, a bomb went off, but a lot of the casualties were crisis actors. That's another thing to look into. There are crisis actors, people hired to pretend and portray to be victims in a situation that they weren't a part of. So we get to now this case of George Floyd. Do I believe George Floyd died? Yes. Do I believe he was a victim and a sacrifice and chose to allow himself to be killed? Yes. Because all the evidence is starting to point and show that this is part of the pre-orchestrated plan, that they are using this situation, allowing this situation to happen, putting the information and the video and the message out there to cause this racial divide. They have been pushing the media, the narrative has been pushing this racial divide. This is where it comes into that social engineering. We are being manipulated and socially engineered by the media, by the politicians, by the system to create this unrest, to create this divide between us. A lot of what is showing up with the provocateurs in all these riots are Antifa and people that are being paid and saying, we'll pay you $25, $30 an hour if you go in and start rioting and looting. You get to have fun, smash shit up, and you get to make money while you do it. But it pushes their agenda. It was people that normally would say, I'm not going to be a part of that shit. And then they would decide to just jump in there and go do it. And then it gets into that herd mentality mindset where, oh, well, he's doing it and getting away with it, then I can do it and get away with it. And the next guy jumps in, the next guy jumps in. It's where the term sheeple comes about. People too often follow the herd. They're like lemmings off a cliff instead of thinking for themselves, going, maybe this isn't the fucking right thing to do. So, getting back to COVID. A lot of the donated money from Epstein, it all ties into that cabal, that group that all work together. To then we get to Bill Gates, where Bill Gates has been pushing his euthanasia agenda throughout the world, and little bits of it are slipping out here, little bits of it are slipping out there when he slips up in a speech or says the wrong thing of, oh, we're trying to bring, his TED Talk, where he's like, we're trying to bring the populace down, we can solve those population numbers by giving vaccines to people. He has stated that himself. But along with that is the tracking. There has been a lot of the talk of chipping people, and now we get to the fact of where supposedly Bill Gates has created a quantum dot tattoo, where it is a small little bit of whatever, tattooed information that will be right on your wrist that can just be like Wi-Fi scanned, if you will, to have all your medical information put onto that tattoo and have that with you. So COVID is giving that reason and excuse to say, oh, well, you want to be safe in society, here, have a vaccine. So in order to get that vaccine, though, here, we're going to offer you this quantum dot tattoo that'll put all your medical information on it, and it'll be the proof that you have, the proof that you have that vaccine, so that you can just go and wave to say, oh, I'm safe and have the vaccine to get into a place. Along with that is where you come into 5G. I've been trying to warn people of the dangers of 5G because on the broad range spectrum, all the scientific studies that have been done thus far have been shown that it can penetrate human skin, human flesh. And people are like, oh, well, that's not this horrible thing. In what I just found from the German scientist that I was talking about, he was talking about Morgellons, that the whole chemtrail conspiracy is actually Morgellons, which are small mycelium not microscopic, but really almost so small you can't detect it with human eye, but under ultraviolet light they appear, that these Morgellons have been sprayed on us so that they will be within our system, so that when the 5G is then enacted, that radio wave frequency that is hitting our bodies can actually penetrate our skins and can actually affect the Morgellons within our skin. But at the same point, what I've come to see is that it's that quantum dot tattoo, that it's a tracing and a tracking mechanism, that with the 5G, they're going to be able to use that as its own strong enough source that they then can collect the data from the quantum dot tattoo to then track you and see you and watch you wherever you go. That's my cell phone right there. We have our cell phones that we can take around or take out of our pocket, not take with us. But for the most part, there is anything, but no freedom when you carry your cell phone with you. Anything that was the other thing when I was doing everything before, I used to carry a flip phone, because with a smartphone you have GPS tracking on it. They have the availability to pinpoint your location if they want to, just by pulling up your phone information. We can get rid of that and walk freely if we so choose right now still. But if the quantum dot tattoo is put into place with my brain just shut off. Not with the virus. The inoculation for the virus. Vaccine. There, that's what I'm looking for. So anyways, with all of that, with Epstein's death, with the child trafficking, that's where everything started to tie back in together, where this plan of tracking everybody and controlling everybody's movements on if you survive through this next phase of what's going to occur, that you'll have to be a slave to their system, and that you are nothing more than a piece of cattle to be used for, their gaining of wealth and their better life and their fancy desires, because they're still trying to control this planet. So, the plan of how I've seen it all play out is that there is all of this been set up for the dollar to collapse, the stock market to crash, for this rebellion to be raised up so that anybody that is an aggressor or is a dissenter to the state can be taken out, can be possibly sent off to those FEMA camps, can be possibly be beheaded with those guillotines. And that the virus is the other population control agenda, and I keep referring to it as the culling, that they've been wanting to cull the human populace and take the numbers back down. A lot of it in the scientific groups and the more highly intelligent people that are part of these groups, they believe that it is because of the Earth to survive, to save it, that they don't believe that this Earth can continue the biosphere with this many people on the planet, that it's not just that we have enough resources for everybody, but it's how we're destroying this world. The thing is, it's the corporations, it's the entities that create the crap that is not needed for this life that just are killing this planet. Trees after trees being cut down that don't need to be. Automobile after automobile being made that doesn't need to be. Just everything about the waste that we have. So, the virus, from all the evidence right from the get-go back in January, February, early February, was pointing that it was bioengineered, that it was lab created, that it came from this lab that Dr. Church and the other scientists, and the whole thing with Dr. Church came to light because he was arrested the day after lockdown went down in China. The lockdown went in China, across Wuhan, and then the next day the FBI arrested George Church along with 2 Chinese nationals that were trying to smuggle biological materials out of the United States. With this culling, it's from the perspective of what I've seen as it hasn't been what they wanted. The numbers haven't been there for the amount of deaths. That I watch everything from Anthony Fauci, and from him, he had a statement that he made in a PBS documentary before, I want to say it was back in June of last year, where he said that we could have, millions and millions of deaths when this next pandemic comes. Bill Gates had a TED Talk where he stated, we will have this pandemic. There was a scenario run, a fake scenario run in New York City last year, back in September, I believe it was, about, this is what would happen, what would happen if another, if another pandemic happened, and this is what the pandemic is, this is how many deaths will be from it, and this is what, businesses and countries will do to try to stop the pandemic. And then, bam, all of a sudden, a couple months later, we get a pandemic. Go figure. All of it has felt like it's A, call part of the populace, and then B, put a tracking mechanism in every person so that if you survive through the pandemic, if you survive through the civil unrest and revolt that is occurring, that you will be chipped and tracked. No better way to put it. And then again, this civil unrest. There needs to be this civil unrest. Don't get me wrong, but it needs to be pointed in the right direction. Yes, the police, the way that they've been conditioned and programmed to operate, their mindsets, they feel that they're justified for what they do. And at the same time, these people standing up, these protesters, they feel justified for what they do. Who's right? Who's wrong? It's all on a perspective. It's all on a mindset. But it's keeping us fighting ourselves. It's keeping that race relation talk up there of black against white. It's keeping that talk about police against the common man. And now we got National Guard in many cities across, curfews at night, National Guard. And this is that martial law I've been talking about. That was the whole thing with creating the FEMA concentration camps, is that there would be this martial law and this unrest. And I've been telling it for people for a while that I don't believe there's going to be an election. This country is going to start falling apart and collapsing so badly that come November, we're going to be too fucked to have an election. There's not going to be the same standard of living that we have now. The world is going to be different when a lot of you wake up in the morning because of what's been occurring tonight. So, this gets to the point of why I've been reading that book, Rules for Radicals, why I've been talking and warning people of martial law is coming. Hey, it's about time for that revolution, because this is that fight we are now at. It is us against them, not the police, not the other people of, we are all citizens here. It is the fight of us against that satanic system that is trying to control and rule everything around and create this mass chaos so that they can track us and control us. We, as the common people, we need to stand up. We need to take it to the actual enemy, the real enemy, and it's this failed system of power. Do I believe America can continue on as a constitutional republic? As it is, no. As a possible new constitution written, maybe. But for the most part, it's done. It's gone. We do not have a constitutional republic anymore. We are living in a police state. And we have our last few weeks, days maybe, months, to see how it's going to go. Are we going to take the stand to say this evil, and yes, I do believe there is good and evil in the world. I don't think everything's gray or black and white or whatever. It just vileness. Put it in reverse. The reverse of evil is vile. The vile evil? I don't know. Not reverse, whatever. When you mix the letters up, jumble. Nah. I haven't been sleeping well, so my brain's been in so many different places. Forgive me if I lose train of thought a lot. But it's just, are we going to take that stand against this corrupt, satanic nature of those in power, those that are the true enemy? And are we going to do what's right for humanity, what's right for future generations, what's right for our children? When I was a skinhead, one of the phrases that was taught to us was the 14 words that we must, and I probably don't remember it all correctly, but that we must create a better future. We must preserve the white race and create a better future for our children, something like that. But the new 14 words is we must preserve the human race and create a better future for our children. People all over the world, the ones that are not a part of that cabal, the ones that are not a part of that satanic cult, the ones that are not about murder and death and violence that has been perpetrated around the world. We need to stand up together. We need to make a stand. We need to do something, or all this is going to fall apart. Everyone will be a slave to the system, even more so than we already are. When we can be so much better, we can do so much more, and we can be such a greater, grand people than what we've been. But we have allowed so much evil, so much misery, and so much pain to be allowed in this world that it's time to make it stop. It's time to end it. It's time to be willing to give of yourself and possibly give of your life to make a difference in this world, and not just idly sit by and say, I'm content now, life is good now. I don't need to worry about everything else. I don't need to be concerned about that situation because it's not affecting me personally at the moment. And if we don't take this stand, if we don't take back our freedom and our sovereignty, we will die on our knees. And I myself would rather die standing than to ever kneel to another.